Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to the Queen's Kitchen. Today's recipe is going to be lemon bars. They're my favorite treat for wintertime or summertime. They're sweet and tart and it's a fantastically easy recipe. You could probably make them for probably under 20 bucks to be honest. It's really easy. Subscribe to my channel for more recipes. This is actually my first video and I'm really excited to be cooking for y'all. So today's recipe is lemon bars. I actually found this recipe when I used to work back in Texas, and it was my first chance to ever make a commercial-sized recipe, a dessert recipe specifically. And I had this really awesome chef friend. His name was Frank, and he was in culinary school, I think for maybe like 2 or 3 years, and he was teaching me some things in the kitchen. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to make the lemon bars for this catering event we're having?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." They had this humongous mixture. It was awesome. And he was like, "Yeah, go ahead." You know, and this is obviously a very small version of that recipe, but I made it, I think, for something like 200 people. So I made big sheet trays of lemon bars, but they were so good. So that's what we're doing today, lemon bars. One of my favorite desserts. Lemon bars are good, in my opinion, both cold and warm weather. Because, you know, I love like citrusy stuff when it's warm, and when it's cold, I love like warm things. So, you know, lemon bars have like a perfect dessert anytime. So we're gonna start with the shortbread base first. I have some all-purpose flour, some light brown sugar, I use margarine because I don't have to use the salt. Since margarine already tastes salty, and margarine tastes good. People don't like it, but I think it tastes great. And I'm gonna add some lemon zest to the actual shortbread base. That's gonna add a nice complement to the lemon filling. So first we're gonna start with our flour. So we're gonna start with our flour first, and then we're going to add in the brown sugar. Okay. And then we're gonna add in the margarine. So the trick with this is what you want to do is you basically would want to incorporate the margarine into the flour and brown sugar. And you want to do this to create like a nice crumbly, malleable shortbread base. Now, some people use like a whisk or like a cutter, a pastry cutter, or other things like that. I just use a fork and my fingers because it's a lot easier to do that. So I'm just going to take the fork and I'm going to slowly just cut in the flour and brown sugar together. And don't worry, I've been washing my hands, so, you know, I always wash my hands constantly. Now, right before I'm going to put this in here, I'm going to go ahead and zest the lemon in and just slightly like toss it around. Because you don't want the lemon zest to be incorporated too much. Because if you do that, you're going to lose the flavor. Okay, and like I said, just going to give it a quick toss. Okay, and now it's going to go in the pan. So the object of this is to get it nice and packed down tight because it's going to bake like this. So you want it to be evened out. Now, typically, this is a 9x13 casserole dish. You can use a baking sheet, that's fine too. people who like thinner crust. I love breading, and because you know, thick, and so I really like the idea of like a thicker shortbread base with the filling, because it's more in your mouth. Okay. See, and you can see the lemon zest pieces in there, and that's what you want. You don't want them to be crumbled up anymore. You don't want them to be, you know, entirely incorporated, because you can get those bursts of lemon flavor, especially when it cooks. Ooh, and the kitchen's about to smell like delicious shortbread lemon. Okay, so once it's packed down nice and tight, okay, we're gonna go ahead and pop this in the oven at 350. So I have a like a cheap mixer. I got this, you know, a while back when I was in college, and it was one of the first things I got whenever I left home. But I really want a KitchenAid mixer. It's my dream. So this is the filling part. Let me get my recipe over here, because as much as I make this, I don't always remember it entirely. There we go. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do with this, we're going to go ahead and add the eggs and the sugar in, the eggs and the granulated sugar in first. So we're going to go ahead and take our eggs. We're going to separate our eggs here. You know, I've always been the type of person that's like, you know, I can do the whole one hand egg cracking thing, but you know, why risk getting a shell in there? You know, I'd rather just know how to do it, know how to do it with two hands and not get a shell. Okay, so we're gonna add the eggs and the sugar in, and then we're gonna mix this until it's incorporated. Okay. Now the next step is going to go ahead and be to add in the lemon juice and the flour. Now the reason I mix the eggs and sugar first is to incorporate the eggs in, what happens with the eggs and the sugar is it creams them together, and it makes a really nice, almost gelatinous consistency. And that's going to really help whenever you're adding whenever you're making, putting it on the shortbread base, and it's going to bake into like a nice gelatin, essentially. That's why it's always important to cream your eggs and your sugar together first. So then we're going to go ahead and add the lemon juice and our flour. And of course I'm going to put the recipe, in the description, because I know I'm not saying every single amount of recipe here, having each ingredient. Okay. So I'm just going to fold this in. Now the reason I'm not mixing this is because you don't ever want to overmix your eggs, especially with stuff like this, because if you whip them too hard, then you're going to get a really, really odd consistency when it starts cooking. I'm just going to fold in your flour here. Stir it up nice. Okay, and then now I'm just going to add the vanilla. Now, a normal lemon bar recipe doesn't call for vanilla, but I love vanilla. Vanilla is such a good flavor. And so I like to add it. You know, it adds a real nice subtle note to the lemon bar. So it's not super tart. Okay. Now you want to fold this in until it's a little frothy on top. As you can see, we have some froth. And that's the filling. And now what we're going to do is we wait for our shortbread base to bake. As soon as the shortbread base comes out, then we're going to go ahead and pour the filling onto it immediately while it's still very hot. And this is going to allow the filling to set on the base. That way it doesn't, you don't get any curdling or anything like that whenever we bake it. And then we're going to reduce our temperature and we're going to go ahead and bake it, and then we'll see what happens when they come out. All right, so our shortbread base is done. So we're going to pull it out. Now it's not completely done yet, obviously, because it has to bake a little more. Like I said, we're going to put this immediately, we're going to put the filling immediately onto the shortbread base. So you're just going to pour it. all that deliciousness out. Okay. And now we're going to reduce our temperature to 300. And now that this is back in, I always add, before I put it in the back in, especially if it has bubbles and stuff or frothiness, I always kind of just tap it a little bit to get everything kind of, all the air to come out. I'm going to put it back in. And now this is going to cook for 30 minutes. And when it's done, we will cut them up and enjoy them. So lemon bars are done. They've been cut. And as you can see, I put on some powdered sugar, which is the topping. And that's all there is to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. And don't forget to subscribe. And thank you for being part of my very first video. I know I'm a little amateur, but I'm hoping to get a lot better quality. And if you have any ideas for recipes, leave them in the comments.